Alex Furlong is about to die. And enter the year 2009, where immortality is only a heartbeat away, where money can buy anything.
Shouldn't you consider an alternative body?
Sorry to deceive you, including life itself.
Why me? Why don't they just grab somebody who's alive now?
Take a look at these people, Alex. They've lived half their lives with no ozone layer.
Tell me who's behind all this.
I'm sorry, but I can't tell you that.
It's Alex! Don't you remember me?
He died, Jewel. Someone paid to bring him back.
I watched you die.
Welcome to my mind. Don't resist. Lose your mind, and you can live forever. Freejack.
Oh boy.
Oh boy, indeed.
Another one in our series. This is interesting.
That's right. This is another in the series of the podcast Dispatch Aegis, which you're listening to right now, which is hosted by myself, Jake, and my better than ever co-host, Skip.
If this is better than ever, I don't want to go on anymore. There's really no hope for the future. Yes, I am Skip. Jake is my lower half.
Yeah. I'm the dingly bits.
As My Be Giants would say.
I'm the Ghibli nethers, as they are.
You're definitely the brains of this one.
So this is the latest in our series of rockstars in movies.
From Eastside Theater Guild, specifically, our sub
show.
Well, we actually have several. We've got Retro Rewind, we've got this.
It's true.
We've got some out there.
Yeah. Although the main episodes, the Dom episodes as they were.
The tops.
Well, it's not necessarily top and bottom. More,
Oh, you're saying there's somebody in the middle? There's no judgment there.
The sandwich episodes.
Where it's Eastside Morales is in the middle.
Speaking of which.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, clear your minds. Imagine this. A young man dies in a fire crash. But he did not die. No. He was body snatched into a future much different from his own. A future where time, space, and death have been conquered and commoditized.
Commodified.
Where life is cheap. What?
Commodified, right? No, maybe commoditized. I don't care. Keep going.
Did I make... No. Commoditized.
Yeah.
That's,
okay. Yeah, sure. Yeah, go for it.
Should I start that up again?
No. This is all in, baby. Here we go.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Here
great.
we go.
Commoditized. Where life is cheap and unending, if you can afford it. He is adrift and on the run from those who have jacked him from the past to be used as fodder to live on. He must find his way in a new society, ideally aided by friends who just turn their backs on him, clamoring for the price on his head. Trying to recapture the assistance and admiration of the woman he loved only yesterday, but for her, it was yesteryear. He struggles, but finds himself at the climax, on top of the world, against its richest man, in a race against time, and a test of wills for his very soul. This, my friends, is the skeleton of Freejack.
Hanging in my closet currently.
This also this points to the fact that decent bones do a good body not make.
Are you sure we're not talking about the movie Tomorrow War? Is that not the one we were supposed to watch?
No. In fact...
Is it the movie?
Which would you say is better? Tomorrow War or Freejack?
Oh, Freejack.
I think I'd say Freejack.
I'd say Freejack, yeah. At least it's got, some cool performances and stuff in it. Tomorrow War's kind of a nothing movie.
It's truly you guys jumping into a CGI void to fight CGI monsters in a CGI future.
This one's actually got some interesting stunts and car chases and sets. None of it makes any sense, but I mean, they've got some stuff going on.
They have some stuff indeed.
Tomorrow War is a drag and drop in front of a green screen concept movie, and it's like, well, okay.
Yeah, and I think we're talking about this film mainly for two reasons. Not that it stars one of the poorer Chris's, but that it does star a rock star of the highest order, the lead singer of the Rolling Stones, Mick Jagger.
That's right, as the villain, just as in Runaway, which starred, of course, Gene Simmons from Kiss.
Tongue and Simmons.
Tongue and Simmons. Now, I would like to point out, and I know we haven't gotten too far into it, but I would like to point out, we're underselling it a little bit, because there are two rock stars in this movie.
Oh,
That's right. Mick Jagger and David Johansen.
True.
Dexter Poindexter from the New York Dolls and of Scrooged fame, my favorite Christmas movie of all time.
Waterfalls, Frank the Angel.
When he saw his mother. One of the greatest performances in any, especially Christmas movie. 100%.
That's what I thought of him was growing up as a kid. And then it was like, oh, he sings too? That's weird.
I remember him from It's Getting Hot, Hot, Hot.
No.
It was one of the biggest hits in the world.
From 1982.
Mm-hmm.
The song was used as the walk-on music for Rob Cross when he won the 2018 PDC World Darts Championship.
Oh, man, that's how you know you've made it. Mama, Papa, guess what?
The 1986 FIFA World Cup. It was the theme song for them, but it was done by Montserration?
Oh, so they covered it.
Yeah, it's a cover.
Oh. That's really sad.
No, Buster Poindexter covered Hot, Hot, Hot by Montserration musician.
All right.
Arrow.
All right.
Wait, Montserration musician? Where are they from if you're Montserration?
That's a good question.
The British Montserrat? The British Overseas Territory? What does that mean? The British Overseas Territories? That's in the Caribbean.
Yeah, like in America, that would be like St. Croix or those protectorates that we have that aren't officially states.
Yeah. Montserrat is a mountainous Caribbean island, part of the Lesser Antilles chain.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Okay.
Part of the Lesser Antilles chain letter, which do not respond to.
But how else am I going to get that $100?
Or not die.
Well, it's one or the other.
Right.
We would get to David Johansen.
I'm just saying, this one is unique because it has two rock stars in it. Actual rock stars.
But I would say that Mick Jagger's the lead horse in this particular race here.
100%, yeah.
We did pick a sci-fi movie, again, with rock stars in the foci. I'd also say another thing about this film is what I would call concepts of ideas. What could have been really cool if it was not derailed, deleted, or defeated.
Okay. So you gave some quantifiers. Okay, qualifiers.
Yeah. This could have been a film that made one think. Flowing from a novel about a society that had conquered death, but cheapened life in the process. Bringing intellectual query and spiritual undertaking to task instead of insert chase scene and gunfire here. Now, this was a feature born from Ron Shusett and Dan O'Bannon, who were working on We Can Remember It For You Wholesale.
Total Recall.
At the time, this is the 1970s, but they didn't really see it as a viable option then. So instead, they wrote this little film, not sure if you heard of it, it's called Alien.
It's okay.
In the 80s, though, they returned and made Total Recall together. Mm-hmm. But in the intervening years, Shusett had acquired the rights to Immortality, Inc. Now, Immortality, Inc. was a novel. It's about Thomas Blaine, who dies in 1958 and wakes up in 2110 as a publicity stunt for a company. His consciousness had been taken from the time of his death then and transported into the future into a new body. Now, at this time, death has become a commodity. Science has figured out time travel and that the afterlife is real. There's ghostly phenomena all around, and bodies have just become fodder for the wealthy. They live in guarded high-rises and hunt the poor for sport. Life is so crushingly awful that things like suicide booths are commonplace in the street. In fact, in the novel, The main character, he gets into a line, and it isn't until he gets up to the booth and he realizes people are just getting in to die that he realizes what it is and it gets out. Now, this was something that's been parodied a few times, most notably in Futurama.
Futurama, yeah.
Now, while working on Total Recall, Shusett was developing the script. He decided to take out Thomas Blaine and put in a new short protagonist, that of Alex Furlong, a race car driver, made it a shorter time shift of only 18 years, and took out all that whole afterlife science stuff and put in more action. This was sold to Morgan Creek production company, who at the time were working on their biggest feature to date, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
Oh boy.
Now, Morgan Creek liked this, and they wanted Bruce Willis to be the star, but he was too busy and passed. The film was searching for both a star and a director here.
Mm-hmm.
The New Zealand director, Jeff Murphy, at the time was making Young Guns 2 for Morgan Creek.
Ah, the second best of those movies.
I don't know. I'd say it's more fun than the first, but I have a soft spot for both Young Guns.
It's also not
personally.
as good as the first one, but...
No, probably not, but it's not bad.
Well, they're both kind of bad, but...
Yeah. At the time, he was the biggest filmmaking export to Hollywood, as he was searching for bigger avenues to tell his stories. Supposedly, he almost was picked to direct Predator around this time. Now, while the executives were focused entirely on Robin Hood, Murphy was given free rein on Young Guns 2, made a bunch of script rewrites, and he made it a success. It made more money than I think the first one. From the success of that, he was offered Immortality, Inc. He read the script, but saw some problems. Said none of the thought-provoking material from the book was in the script. Now, he didn't want to make a straight sci-fi action film, while the studio wanted something a little more Schwarzenegger-y type action vehicle that they could really bank on.
Which they wouldn't have gone for if it were for Predator being successful.
Yeah, or Total Recall.
Right.
Or all of these other things,
That's right.
with Conan, whatnot.
That was a weird period in time in which, at least the genre of movies that would have normally been overlooked for these action stars, because of the success of things like Predator, now those are the go-to genres for these action stars, which is bizarre. But hey, we got some good stuff out of it.
Yeah, it was a product at the time, and you get some gems from that kind of thing.
To the extent where the success of Predator killed other movies that were going to happen around the same time, which eventually led to sort of like a domino effect of getting to I Come in Peace, because there was another I'm hunting an alien cop buddy type movie. Predator came out, they thought it was too close, and so different studios sort of adapted the premise of using an alien in these things to compete with Predator, killing off some of those ones that were at least parallel thought or competitors with Predator.
Yeah, fan the flames for some, but extinguish the fires for
100%. And unfortunately, that's why one of the reasons that Dolph Lundgren never quite got his big movie. Because there were movies that he was attached to that actually were just too close to Predator that got canceled, and he never got his big break.
Well, I think also part of that, is that he was that next generation of action superstar as the studios were winding down from the free reign they had in the early to mid 80s. By that point, you have stuff like Canon starting to go under. These big budgets are getting shifted to other things, and they're giving less money, less effort, less directorial oversight. I think Jean-Claude Van Damme, Steven Seagal to an extent, some of the Chuck Norris stuff, Dolph Lundgren, Brandon Lee, they got what could have been given money and time, but the studio system had kind of contracted to a point where a lot of those are less time and effort. Money is given to some of those, and they're going like straight to video, or they just don't get the hype. They never got the presence of a Stallone or a Schwarzenegger. It was a different landscape for the action stars at that point.
Right. I mean, because like in between Predator and this, you get RoboCop, which totally works on its own thing, but also is a complete outlier to all that kind of stuff and successful. But then also, if you can just do that with Commando, you don't have to do the sci-fi stuff and all the big budget stuff. You can just make movies like Mixing in Action and Commando and more Die Hard sequels instead of doing the fun stuff that they did with action stars in this very brief period of time where they were all sci-fi and fantasy.
Yeah. They wanted a Schwarzenegger type film. Murphy, the director, worried that it would be
Alex Murphy.
too dumbed down, kind of like how We Will Remember It for Wholesale was slimmed down into Total Recall. He told the studio he didn't want an Arnie-esque adventure and wanted more of an everyman that the audience could identify with, which the studio responded positively with because they had already given the offer for the role to Emilio Estevez. Now, Murphy had already worked with him. They had a good relationship on Young Guns 2, so he was cool with that. Murphy asked to rewrite the script along with Stephen Pressfield, who was an uncredited Total Recall writer, and the studio agreed to those rewrites. Now, Murphy wanted to bring some of the more thoughtful elements from the book back into this screenplay, along with some social satire. But the execs hated it, despite having already agreed to let Murphy change things. Jim Robinson, who at this time was the chairman and CEO of Morgan Creek, then got involved here. Now, apparently part of the agreement between the studio and the director was that there are elements in the script that could not be changed, even though allowing for changes and rewrites was part of the deal with the director, Murphy, to come on in the first place. So he rewrote stuff, gave it to them. There's like, no, we can't change that, and we're not going to change that. And he's like, hey, this is part of the deal to bring me on. They're like, so we don't care. Film what you had.
Interesting.
Now, Murphy considered legal action to get out of the contract at this point, but his lawyer told him, like, even if he won, he probably would have an injunction placed on him by the studio, which would keep him out of work for like probably over a year, and he probably would have a bad reputation not being easy to work with. That's if he won the case. If he had lost the case, he'd still have those things, and he'd owe a ton of money to the studio. So he's like, I guess I'll just go ahead and make the movie? What could go wrong? Now, Stuart Oken was brought in as line producer, and Joe Alves as set designer, and Murphy butted heads with both. Unfortunately for Murphy, the studio sided with those two over Murphy on almost every decision. For the film, there's a lot of car designs, and Murphy wanted more of a Blade Runner or Mad Maxy look to them, but Alves ixnayed that and came up with his own designs that cost like, I guess, $500,000 to make. And Murphy described them as laughable. But that's what we see in the film.
They are laughable. I'm literally watching it right now. The first car chase scene where he steals the champagne truck. I see where they think they're going, but without the rest of this world looking like this, it makes no sense whatsoever.
It totally doesn't fit within the rest of the scope of the film.
No, they're obviously just a bunch of fiberglass bodies put on top of go-karts.
Yeah. And they look like weird teardrop pseudo train things.
A lot of them are supposed to look like 30s, 40s era cars, which is fine, especially since the PT Cruiser isn't too far off. But at the same time, they don't seem to fit here, this setting, at all. At least with RoboCop, everything just kind of looked like a 1997 Ford Taurus, and you bought it. You know, like you bought that they belonged in that world. Or even with Tim Burton in Batman 89. All those cars at least existed in that world, and so you don't bat an eye when they have vintage cars. But they're cars that are made to look futuristic by looking vintage, but then also are contemporary. And it really throws everything off pretty badly here. It sticks out like a sore thumb.
Yeah. And their cars we'll talk about a little more later. So, along with some of the producing people he was working with and the set designer and some of the special effects people, he also didn't jive with the cinematographer and the casting director.
Oh,
so
good.
That was great. But that's what he had to work with, so he pushed on. They started casting. Linda Fiorentino was originally hired, mostly because she was able to pull off both being younger and older with the right clothing and makeup design. Which was essential for the script.
Yeah.
And she had good chemistry with Emilio Estevez. The studio wanted Anthony Hopkins, so he signed on. That's
all you need to know about that, because he will sign on to anything as long as the paycheck is right.
So the reason he did it was that the filming would give him something to do while he was in the United States for the Oscars. Because The Silence of the Lambs is about to come out, and they were banking on that being big and him being there for the awards.
And they were right.
So he's like, I'll sign up, because he only had to do 2 weeks of shooting.
Oh.
He didn't really care.
Oh, no.
He said that in interviews and whatnot.
He still does roles like that.
I think this is more kind of like, I haven't really done sci-fi. I'll do that, whatever.
Yeah, it's true. He wasn't a big star back then yet.
Yeah. Vincent Schiavelli, who was supposed to play a Freejack insurance salesman, and David O'Shea.
Ned Ryerson? Needle-nosed Ned? Ned the Head?
No, that's not Vincent Schiavelli.
No, I know. It's just made you think of that character.
Oh, the insurance salesman bit. Okay. Sorry. I was thinking like, no, that's a different...
No.
different bald-headed guy.
But it is, yes, you're right. Talk about typecasting, Jesus Christ.
Yeah. David Roche was also brought on. Apparently Sledgehammer, which was a complete failure in America.
Oh, you talking about the television show Sledgehammer?
The television show Sledgehammer.
Love that show, and
Of course.
I want us to do a retro rewind about that show.
It was a failure in the U.S., but it was a huge hit in New Zealand, and Murphy was a big fan of his.
All right.
For the antagonist chaser role, they wanted someone like, who could be menacing, but kind of verbose, and it was kind of sexy and cool, but a little off-putting. Willem Dafoe was originally considered.
Oh, hell yes.
Brought in to talk to the studio execs, but he was passed over when Mick Jagger became available.
Jesus Christ.
Jagger then was sent to meet Murphy, and he said he'd always wanted to be in a science fiction film, and so he signed on. And they rewrote the character a bit, because originally the character was much more dour and straight-faced, but they wanted to be a little more likable antagonist. Someone who could play off of Emilio Estevez in the film.
And I have to say, having watched it a couple of times recently now, so many other characters in this are so dour and play it straight so hard that this movie would probably be a really bottom barrel sci-fi slog if it weren't for the even tiniest things that we get from Mick Jagger.
Yeah, and we'll get into a little bit of how the tone's all over the place, and a lot of it doesn't really fit together. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
That'll come up. So 2 weeks into filming, the director had been sending the studio dailies, and they saw them and hated them.
Yeah.
They blamed all of the issues on Linda Fiorentino and wanted her axed. Now, it's not great to replace a main character. It's both really expensive and a pain.
Back to the Future.
So the studio flew in Renee Russo, the former model, but Murphy met with her and didn't really find her right for the role. But Morgan Creek had already made up their mind, and it wasn't really for him to decide. They were just saying, hey, we have to show you these people before they're in the film as part of the agreement, but they're already signed up, so she's going to be the role.
It's going to happen, yeah.
Apparently, when asked about the change, the CEO, Robinson, claimed that Linda Fiorentino, quote, didn't give him a hard-on.
Wow.
They also...
But Renee Russo did? Okay, I guess.
Sometime around this time, they also fired David Roche.
Oh,
for unknown reasons.
Well,
They then had to reshoot a bunch of scenes after production had wrapped up. The producers didn't want any of the in-camera effects that Murphy had come up with for doing some of the sci-fi stuff.
Oh.
Instead, they wanted the cutting-edge computer CGI garbage that they didn't quite understand or have the ability to use at this point in time. Because again, this is 1991 they're making this.
The more things change, the more they stay the same, right?
Yeah. This filming had taken 11 weeks, and the budget had ballooned to $36 million, up another 4 or 5 from what it originally had been put at. After filming wrapped up, Murphy took a few weeks off, and then he came back with the editor to put together a cut of the film. They watched it, and it was awful.
Oh, no shit.
Everything was off, and all over the place. So they recut and rejiggered again and again. After 10 weeks, per Directors Guild of America rules, they had to show the film, no matter the state, to the studio.
Oh, boy.
The studio took the film, didn't even look at it, sent it straight to a screening audience, which ended up being a total flop. 3 weeks worth of reshoots were called for, but when the director asked which scenes or for how long, or how do you know it's going to cost, this amount of money, the studio couldn't say. They're just going to do it anyway. So the studio brought Shusett back and had 15 rewritten or retooled scenes to shoot. Almost every one of those scenes was an action piece. And when the director saw this, he's like, no, I can't do this. I'm standing my ground. These are unfilmable. He took these problems to one of the producers, and the producer surprisingly agreed with them. But then the CEO, Robinson, stepped in. Now, at the time, he thought the music was the issue. Mark Isham was doing the music, and Robinson called him up and said, we need 20 minutes of additional rock music in here. It's going to be hip and cool, and it's what's really going to make the film work. Isham then asked the director, hey, what's this about? The director knew nothing about it, and he also didn't think it would fit, but they had to go along with it anyway. So Isham put together the score that the way Robinson wanted and added the 20 minutes of music. But when Robinson heard it, he hated it. And he canned him.
Oh, good.
Brought in some other people to do the music and bought some music from like the Scorpions and some other bands. Definitely what the film needed.
It's just Scorpions, by the way.
Now, at this point, Murphy, the director again, asked to be fired.
Yeah, well.
He was like, just fire me.
Alan Smithy can do the rest of it.
So that he could not be sued for breach of contract. They would not do that. Murphy returned to shoot new scenes that were written by another new writer, Dan Gilroy. Now, Gilroy added more humor to the scenes. They took those scenes and made a new cut that ran 95 minutes long. Robinson, again, the CEO, hated it. He decided, hell with this, I'll do it myself.
Oh, God.
Even though the film was scheduled to be sent off to the negative cutters in just a few days, and Robinson wasn't an editor.
Oh, my God.
That didn't matter. So he then brought in 3 different sets of editors, different teams,
Jesus.
set them all up in different studios, and would have them work on different parts of the film. And he would travel from suite to suite and give his say. This beefed the runtime up now to 110 minutes. Admittedly, he hadn't watched the final edit after he had worked these things and just sent it off to the negative cutters to then be put together and sent to the theaters. Now, at this point, Murphy had asked for possessory credit. This is kind of like whenever you see like a Spike Lee joint or this is a Richard Linklater film. That's a special credit that they have to negotiate in their contracts and go through like a lot of legal wrangling to get that put in.
Sure.
Murphy asked to have that removed. He also thought of completely divorcing himself from the film and going the Alan Smithy route.
There you go.
But
so, for those of you who don't know, Alan Smithy, it's the alias that... Because I don't think we've ever actually addressed what that is. It's the...
Well, I think we have, but
did we
go
actually
ahead.
talk about that? It's the alias that directors use when they don't want their names actually put on the film.
Yeah, when they're completely divorced from the film, they don't want to be known for it at all. It then is now directed by Alan Smithy, or there are other pseudonyms, so they aren't a part of the film. But to do that, it is a legal hassle, and he thought it wasn't worth going through those hoops. But the cinematographer, who he had had problems working with in the first place, Amir Mokri, did go that route, and he is an uncredited part of the production. So it was originally supposed to come out in the fall, but was delayed until January 17th, 1992. It premiered number 4 in the box office and had a precipitous drop ever after that. It was a complete flop.
No doubt.
The director was then slighted by both the cast and the crew, even though it's debatable how much they knew about the inner workings of production and how much he had to deal with. He was given smaller gigs after that, but never really given another chance in Hollywood. He later returned to New Zealand to do some small things, but when a big production came over, some people saw the value in his work. That's why Peter Jackson hired him the second unit director for all of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, which he did work on.
Oh, nice. Good for him.
Yeah, it was good. Unfortunately, again, he never really had his say to really do much after that, and he did pass away in 2018.
Oh.
But that's some of the, a lot of people just blame him for the issues, for it kind of being a bit of a mess. So a lot of people don't see a lot of the issues that he tried to make a different film, but this is what he got shoved into. This is how it came out. As you can see, that's not the best way to make a film, but maybe we should cover a bit of the film.
Yeah.
So you kind of see what these issues are.
Mm-hmm.
So we start with smoky saxophone credits and computer beep boop boop bop noised credits pop up.
All of those saxophone things will come back later, too, by the way.
Oh, the saxophone is not going away.
Oh, no, it comes back both diegetic and not diegetic.
Yeah.
It's in there.
Yeah. So there's a cross-cut of the Jack crew mobilizing to the spot, and present-day Emilio Estevez, or Alex, as he will be referred to now, Alex Furlong.
Not Eddie Furlong, but Alex Furlong.
Not Eddie Furlong. Also, we've talked about Freejack.
Yeah.
I was like, what does Freejack mean? I always thought, okay, so they're jacking him from the past to put him into a new body, and then he escapes, so he's a free Jack.
You're thinking of the cyberpunk, Johnny Mnemonic
Right.
Jacking into the what-have-yous.
I mean, I guess that's kind of where they were taking it from.
Right. Just even the general impression, yeah, you and I both, when they open this up, especially if you haven't seen it, it's kind of the vibe you get.
Yeah, but when I was looking it up, Freejack also comes from the Revolutionary War times. a Freejack to the freedom won from the Union Jack during the American Revolution. It can also refer to a dissident, an everyday person who works for the common good, or is a symbol of revolution, defiance, and liberty.
Well, that actually makes way more sense now if you think about it.
In some parts of the South and Caribbean, Freejack was a term for an ex-slave or a person of mixed-race heritage. So if you combine all three of those, it kind of makes a bit more sense.
It does actually make some semblance of sense.
Without that context, you're like, what?
Especially when they start talking about bone jackers and things like that.
Yes, yeah.
What?
So we meet Alex here. He seems kind of like a big kid, and he and his girlfriend, Renee Russo, he isn't nervous about the race at all. He's an F1 driver.
It's a weird way to put that. He wasn't nervous about the race at all. Also, he's an F1 driver. Okay, yeah, so let's start out. He was an F1 driver. He is a race car driver, first and foremost.
It's true. And he's an upcoming race, and he's not nervous at all, even though his girlfriend is. Mm-hmm. He does this funny joke, which I thought was really our part of the time, really sets it in a place. Mm-hmm. And he talks about, what's your big electronic typewriter thing? Because he doesn't really know what a computer is.
Right.
Because this is 1991 and it's newfangled. What? He also asks for Renee, which I should give the character's name, of Julie Redland, to, quote, nibble his ear for luck. Kind of creepy, but every couple has their thing.
In the first half of this movie, she's essentially playing the same character she plays in Major League. Well, I mean, like, they're together, but, you know, she's sort of the novice intellectual who doesn't really get the race car driving thing and everything, but she supports her, at this point, husband.
Well, just boyfriend and girlfriend. They weren't married.
It's right. They're boyfriend and girlfriend.
Yeah, he's a good partner.
Yeah.
Seemingly smarter and better educated, and maybe has a real job.
Exactly. Yes.
Driving isn't a, quote, real job, but let's be honest.
Compared to what she ends up doing. And
we're also introduced to David Johansen as Brad, his agent, essentially, trying to help him, like, score some deals with investors and advertisers. We're cross-cutting again with the Times space jacking crew, headed up. I mean, it's not headed up by Mick Jagger, Victor Vasendak.
Vasendak.
Yeah, which you're just going to get Vasendak a lot in this film.
You do, and I almost feel like if you rearrange those letters, maybe that means something. It just feels like there's more to that, because where do you come up with that out of whole cloth?
Yeah, it also doesn't come off the tongue very well.
No.
And you hear a lot of people not necessarily struggling with it, but it just doesn't fit.
No, and they never use his first name.
No, it's just Vasendak after that.
Yeah. It is an awkward name.
Yeah. But you get some shots of the gear they're using. Looks kind of interesting, but also ridiculously dated.
Yeah.
Because it's early 90s.
I'm sorry, but a Mylar surgical outfit would be the most... Can you imagine trying to work in a Mylar suit? There's a reason that they use those for emergency blankets for people who are freezing. You'd be a baked potato. I mean, you're just like boiling from the inside the entire time. Especially since they use lasers and...
Bone jacking's so cold, you know.
No, it's cold as ice, my friend.
It's a Brian Bosworth over here.
It sure is.
Now, their jacker techie, he looked like he was supposed to be like Solid Snake.
Are you talking about Eastside Morales?
Yes, yeah. Eastside Morales' character, who is named Ripper.
Awesome.
I was like, oh man, this guy's cool. There are a few characters sprinkled throughout this film where it's like, oh man, can this guy have a backstory movie?
Right.
Because I feel like there's something going on.
Yeah.
He's got glasses, but like part of it's blacked out, you know.
But also, when he doesn't wear the glasses, doesn't wear an eye patch.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't get it. He's got scars.
And he's got this weird bad cop, good cop buddy thing with Vasendak. Mm-hmm. And he's the tech guy, but
yeah,
maybe
like
he has something else going on.
Kind of, yeah. Yes, 100%. And watching it again, I'd rather he just be the villain and cut out Vasendak.
Well...
He's got more to him.
Like cutting out other things, beefing them both up.
Okay, I mean, sure, you can do that too, but I'm just saying, like, this is what you have. Vasendak is a nothing character with no backstory and nothing you care about. This guy at least seems interesting. And he's got the eye patch.
Now, in the novel, apparently there is a definite undercurrent of the rich versus the poor,
right?
Social unrest. You know, I mean, they literally hunt the poor people for sport.
Yeah, which they would never dare to do this in this super pro-capitalist.
No. Plus, I mean, that's like 1958 to 2110 versus 1990 to 2009. So there isn't that big of a gap.
Yeah, that's
which
true.
is a problem really for a lot of things in this film.
Yeah, it should have a Buck Rogers, Flash Gordon vibe, but it doesn't.
Yeah, the reason they do this is because they want him to still interact with people that
he knew from
would
before.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can't set it too far in the future to keep that alive. I think that's a dumb conceit, and you don't need that.
Yeah.
There's plenty of things that are similar where you could have, oh, my great-grandmother talked of you. Now he's falling for the great-granddaughter of Rene Russo.
Which is weird, but yeah, you could make that work. But I mean, even Alien does a better job of that in its franchise where they're like, oh, yeah, we know you had a daughter, but she's 60 now. At least they kind of deal with that in a way that's like, oh, okay, yeah. They remember each other. They remember how things were before this upheaval in society or whatever, which we will get to, I'm sure.
Yeah.
The bum at one point makes a reference to the 10-year depression.
Mm-hmm.
The one that's Burrell from The Wire.
Yeah, known as Eagle Man here, which we'll get to Eagle Man.
Eats river rats.
River rat.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to lock on to the point of death of Alex, kind of this countdown, stay on target locking system, which I think is kind of cool conceptually. So in the past, there's this weird tire collision where he hits the back tire of another car. He hits this, and for some reason, it then catapults him up into the side of a bridge.
Oh yeah, blows up, runs straight into a bridge, pulls a Jane Mansfield in midair to a bridge.
Yeah, I don't know how that would work.
Watching this movie, there are several Starsky and Hutch car ramp accidents that happen, that being one of them, and the main one, really. I don't really understand how it worked that way, or how, without interference, that would have possibly happened, but...
No, the physics on that, it seemed quite wonky.
At best.
Otherwise, I feel like that is happening all the time.
Oh, well, for the rest of the movie, that's just standard.
But I mean, like in real life, if you can just hit somebody's tires like that, and you're going to go flying up in the sky in an F1 car?
Can you imagine how crazy that would be if the physics like really panned out and you just like stepped on the back of somebody's shoe? Smash into a building and die. Wow, okay, yeah, that's...
Yeah. So, at the moment of impact, he is jacked from the past into the future. He's lying on this table inside this mobile science station. Mm-hmm. They revive him, and then they're going to use a 40 megawatt... What do you even call this? An electrical ray gun? It's like a satellite dish on a mechanical arm.
Yeah, what it looks like is when you're at the dentist, they bring down those lights and those arms.
Yes.
There's reflectors and stuff on them. That's what it looks like. But this one has
imagine
got
one
like
of those.
A laser emitter on it.
It shoots electricity out.
Yeah.
So that it can fry your prefrontal lobe.
It doesn't seem all that exact a science that they're doing here.
No, it's just a random electrical bolt. So Alex wakes up, turns it on the docks. They get fried.
Because they're wearing Mylar. Of course they get fucking fried. You could have turned the heat up to 60 and they would have all boiled to death.
What they should have done, they should have had him in a big microwave oven. And
yes.
You see them turning the dial.
Yes, that's exactly what should have happened.
After 2.5 minutes, you have to poke some holes in the Alex vent.
The problem is you didn't wrap him in a paper towel was the real issue.
Never put him in tin foil.
You had to flip him over halfway through. There is actually a great Batman arc where he does this, where he gets put in Arkham and then he escapes by having, like, he peels his cape apart and on the underside is a Mylar lining that he then wraps himself in to get through the laser grid or whatever out of the air duct or whatever. But at the same time, it nearly kills him because it cooks him like a potato.
Double baked.
You know what? If you double up like that, you're going to increase your chances of getting pregnant, though.
It's fine by me, baby.
Never double bag it.
So Alex escapes both the science crew and Vasendek, who's trying to catch him, because Vasendek's hired to get him from point A to point B for the client.
Oh, by the way, all these science guys look like AIM in Marvel.
Yeah. So Alex escapes into this dystopian cliche, which is just crashed cars and burning trash cans everywhere, you know, as people are wont to live in the year 2009.
Do, take it back. Frank Stallone is doing a cappella over one of the burning barrels as we speak.
Kill him.
Oh, well.
Alex gets to a kind of an escape from New York taxi.
Yep.
And he's able to pay for his ride with an antique watch from 15 years ago. What?
Whoa, that's how you know we're in the future.
But then they find out that he's a Freejack. He gets away from all the other bone jackers, as they're called, and he goes to his old house. Now, he doesn't care that at this point, since he was in an accident, woken up, that now it's all caged off, and he goes up. There's a guy with a gun that seems to know him guarding it, but doesn't ask any questions. Let me just get back to my place. So he goes into his house, knocks on the door, and a nice black family is living there. And this is where we learned he's a Freejack. We still don't know what that is yet. But he's been labeled that and told to go away. And we realize something bad is going on.
It's almost like Flight of the Navigator when he tries to go back to his old house.
Sure. I don't remember that much about Flight of the Navigator, to be honest.
I haven't seen it in 20 years plus, but yeah, it's another trope. I used to live here, and like, no, we live here now. Get off our property.
Yeah. Next we see we get to this building, and we see the, quote, spiritual switchboard, which is in the facade of a chapel. And there's a hooded figure, kind of in a Ghost of Christmas Future.
Oh, like from Scrooge.
From Scrooge,
yeah.
And he's, given Sith-esque demands of like, find him, bring him to me, time is running short, blah, blah, blah. Now we find out this is the Max Corp who own the spiritual switchboard building, which because it's jacking, they decided a jack, like kids will play with, is how they will design everything. A giant jack is on top of this building, which was envisioned to be twice as tall as the Empire State Building, having 180 floors.
Jesus Christ.
And then inside this giant jack, there's a smaller jack that we will meet later in the film. That is how you interact with the spiritual switchboard. Again, this spiritual switchboard is an idea, sure.
That doesn't belong in this movie at all?
No. Not at all. There's an idea of spirituality.
But not really.
No. Again, the concept of an idea, but I feel like someone wrote a script that had all of that in.
Sure.
And then they cut all of that out.
Right.
But there's still things that linger, like the name Spiritual Switchboard, or like the nun that Alex will encounter very soon, that feel like they were meant to say something about what does it mean to be human? What is a soul? If you're taking a soul from one body to other.
Right.
Things like that. But all of that's done away with.
Yeah, weirdly enough, those elements still are a huge part of the narrative and yet don't mean anything in the narrative. With the suicide booth thing, that is shown like in the background on buildings, like being projected on a big LED screens, okay? So that's like a leftover from the original narrative. Okay, sure. Not addressed, but still there. But this stuff is addressed and confronted and means nothing.
Yeah, it's lip service paid, but given no bite. There's nothing.
There isn't even any connective tissue to a part of the actual narrative that makes it make sense that it's even in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, the spiritual switchboard thing, then the nun, an actress who has been in tons of stuff. She was the Oracle in Battlestar Galactica, by the way. She was also in Star Trek Picard as, well, I don't want to spoil too much, but a villain.
This is Amanda Plummer.
Yeah, a well-renowned actor.
Yeah, you might know her from Pulp Fiction, where she's Honey Bunny.
Oh, of course she's Honey. Fuck, yes, of course, yes. That's so stupid. I went to the other ones first. Yes, she's Honey Bunny.
That's how your brain works.
You, every last motherfucking one of you. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's a very loud actress when she wants to be.
And symbolizing a character that should mean something in this story, but doesn't.
Yeah. We meet her because Alex breaks into a church to sleep, and he finds the mean nun, again, played by Amanda Plummer, with a shotgun. Now, again, I think in the previous idea of the script, this would have meant something. They would have had more to talk about, but she has her info dump, so it sets us up in the film. Obviously, you're referencing some concepts from a book and the script that never really saw celluloid. We find out about mind transplants.
Even if you don't want to make the entire plot around this spiritual idea, you could have that character at least be like some sort of vestigial belief from before about spirituality, or a comment about the common man and how they view this whole bone jacking thing. But they don't even do that.
No, there are other people there you see in the church that have guns. Yeah. And it seems to be like some sort of resistance.
Right.
Of some spiritual significance, but none of it's delved into.
No, none of it. Which makes me wonder why the fuck is it still in the movie?
Well, because I think you had so many people writing and rewriting things and editing so many different ways, and you have multiple people cutting the film together, and you get stuff like this.
It's like David Ayer's Suicide Squad. Too many cooks, and the meat was rotten to begin with, so I
Yeah. So we find out from her that Judy, his girlfriend, or Julie, his girlfriend.
Julie, yeah.
Is unlisted. But Brad, his agent, is in Sector 7 Park Slope, and she gives him a Glock, as any stranger you find on the street who's been bone jacked.
Any nun you find.
None will give you a gun.
Mother Superior jumped the gun, as the Beatles would say.
We also find that the Sendek at this time has been brought to heel by Jonathan Banks.
Breaking Bad and Better
you might
Call
know
Saul
from
fame.
Breaking Bad as Mike.
Who did just absurd this level sci-fi B-movie shit, essentially until Breaking Bad, and then became kind of an awesome household name.
Now, he seems to be the one in charge at Max Corp currently, and is angry that the Sendek has lost Alex.
Because they're worth money.
Yes, he's been paid a bunch of money. This is a very expensive thing. Only the super wealthy can jack people from the past and then put themselves in. We don't know who that is at this point, but somebody involved with Max Corp is trying to get Alex's body, had hired the Sendek to get it from the point, because you have to go where he died to jack him from, that exact spatial element.
Yeah, so that the body's still alive, but...
Yeah, you can't just flick your fingers and pick it anywhere. You have to go where the exact spatial point where the body is taken from the past.
Which they have done in other things, which I'm sure we will talk about later, but also at the same time makes it super awkward when you're, I don't know, like, let's say there's a F1 race and a driver dies and then you open up the car and there's no body in there. That's a little weird, right?
We'll get to that in just a second.
Okay. Yeah. Jonathan Banks. And then...
Yes, yeah. Jonathan Banks essentially fires Vasendek, but Vasendek kind of like, I'm still going to go on my own and I'm going to find Alex and essentially get my job back, I guess is kind of the vibe.
I guess.
Or it's kind of like, I have a job to do. I'm going to do my job till it's done.
I don't even get that kind of commitment from it. It seems more like, well, I was owed this purse and you've personally wronged me. So I'm going to go do just as much work to do enough work to get my job back and prove that I'm good at this. Though I guarantee you, if there were no money or anything involved, he would just walk away and never talk about it ever again.
Yeah, probably. Again, we don't really get a sense of what's driving a lot of characters.
Motivation. Yeah. Meh. Secondary.
We lost that on the cutting room floor.
Sure did.
So Alex is then walking down the street in Dystopiaville. You get disheveled, mixed-match clothes, future cars, which are awful.
Yeah.
And they spent way too much money on. Right next to horse-drawn cart carriages.
Which is very odd.
Yeah. He walks by a 3D nude movies place, but there seems to be prostitutes out front.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Should you do one or the other?
I think it's kind of one of those, like one-stop shops,
Oh, okay. But if you can look at porn or you can buy a prostitute, why would you?
Levels of income.
I see. Okay. This is also where we get some random tit shot here.
Well,
we'll also get another random tit shot in the club later.
Yeah. I wish Paul Verhoeven had directed this, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
It'd be a way more interesting movie.
100%. Then he randomly gets taken up and uses a human shield during a gang war.
Oh, yeah.
That comes to nothing.
Yep.
Then he finds the address he was looking for.
Rene Russo's address, correct?
No. This is where he finds his old manager.
Brad. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Dexter Poindexter era, stuff.
Yes. Yeah. He meets him. Brad's like, "Oh, hey, wow, it's exciting." Then he starts talking about, "Wow, you must be a Freejack, and this is so wild." And he talks about how he had a big problem with insurance back in the 90s because they wouldn't pay because they couldn't find the body.
There you go.
So they couldn't prove that he was dead, and so the insurance wouldn't pay.
Mm-hmm.
And he said he's heard of Freejacks, but never seen one in the flesh. And then he tests them. He tests that he is him because he's like, points out an ashtray. And it's an old Porsche hubcap that Alex just knows because he's a car guy. And it's like, oh, yeah, it's definitely you, Alex. Then Alex asks some like relevant and interesting questions. Why not grab someone from then? Why not just pick somebody up off the street?
Right.
It'd be a lot cheaper and easier. And then his buddy says that half their lives they've lived with no ozone, carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, benzene, etc. Drugs that weren't around in the 20th century. Like that was all that long ago.
Right.
But essentially he's saying like all the people here are kind of poisoned and who wants to get in one of these bodies because it's not going to last very long. Microplastics and whatnot.
Yeah. If you did this right, would be an interesting plot point because it's not that much different. It's not that long ago. We still have the same problems. And so you could make that like a thing about how like, oh, well, that's just they're rich and they're snotty in their particular view.
Yeah.
But they don't.
If you set it hundreds of years in the future, this makes more sense.
Oh, you mean, isn't that Terminal Velocity? Isn't that the name of that movie? Where they, that plane, all those people were supposed to die in a plane crash, then they take them into the future to fight to repopulate the Earth?
What is that? Is that Terminal Velocity?
I think that's the name of it, because it has nothing to do with the name of... It has nothing to do with the plot.
Terminal Velocity is that Charlie Sheen movie.
What? You know which one I'm talking about? Millennium! Yes, that's the one. It's the same premise, except they take people who, like, die in plane crashes where they would never find the bodies anyway, and they take them into the future to repopulate the Earth in a dystopian future.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
This is that, but sans any real commentary.
Yeah, it's almost like they took that one little concept and made a whole movie off of it. Well, this is just a throwaway line that doesn't make much sense.
Yeah, just like with Future War. Except at least Future War had a goal, a premise of what to do with these people.
Yeah, in Future War, like, they were going there because they were already scheduled to die.
Right.
So if they messed up the future, then it wouldn't matter because they weren't there.
Same thing with Millennium, who's that, like, they brought those people into the future because they already were dead to history.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one, they're just taking them out individually, which is not as compelling or interesting. And then also, if you're going to do that, then make a commentary about the capitalist nature of the exploitative, horrible things that they're doing that lead you to that. But they don't really. They just kind of...
No, or say like, hey, they only Freejack people for specific reasons. There must be something special about your body, which there is.
Yeah.
That we find out in the plot later, but they don't talk about any of that.
I feel like this movie, honestly, feels like it's one of those Walking Dead side stories of the movie Millennium. Oh, also, these rich people can do this too. Millennium is the main plot, the main world we live in, and this is one of those side quests where we talk about the last vestiges of the wealthy desperately trying to cling on to life or whatever.
Yeah, it's like in Johnny Mnemonic, where you have part of the society who's trying to fix this techno virus. Mm-hmm. Why the rich people they don't care, and they're just living for their own pleasure.
Right, which is why I think this is a weirdly cyberpunk movie that fights being cyberpunk to its own detriment. Because, like, what you were saying with the Jack thing, it's like, well, that just screams to me jacking into the Johnny Mnemonic style, jacking into cyberspace or whatever.
You're jacking into a new body,
right,
to upload your consciousness.
But that's not quite what they're doing either.
Not at all.
They took some of the terminology that they definitely didn't understand, and then
see if they had brought him into the future, and the first thing you see is that when he gets brought in the future, they put like a Matrix style plug in the back of his skull.
Sure.
And they got to get him to the jack port.
Yeah.
To like put in the other guy's consciousness. Yeah, that makes more sense. A free jack.
It's derivative and contrived, but you know what? It's a thing.
But it wouldn't be at this point. This is pre-Johnny Mnemonic. This is pre-Matrix.
That is true. It is right before cyberpunk became a real thing in mainstream media. I mean, it's obviously post-Blade Runner, but it would have filled that space. But unfortunately, just like with Runaway, it just fills a space. It's just not... it doesn't fill the space that it should. It just fills a space.
Which is why, like walking acid-spitting spiders, it's just a thing. Who cares?
Or that stereo system you fucked. It fills a space. I don't know if it fills the space we wanted.
Do you want hot dog water?
Would you like pasta out of a coffee pot? Your kid sucks.
We jump to Julie, who works for the McCandless Corporation, Max Corp, which is the biggest corporation on Earth, I guess, which explains why they have the biggest tower in the city, world, whatever.
I think it's funny that the most work they seem to really do that, because they do try to do some cityscape shots, some skyline shots. But then the only one that really stuck out to me was when they're about to go on the car chase, and they come out, and the awning for the company, it says McCandless in barely legible letters, but then has a jack from the game Jacks, which is what the point we were just making. It was like, well, it'd be different if it was a fucking jack, an audio jack or a data jack. No, it's Jacks. It's just the game Jacks.
Whose idea was that? That's so
it's not even the Mortal Kombat character.
Really?
You know what it is? It's very much Abrams' Star Trek, where he's just like, my ex-wife took everything but my bones. That's why I'm called Bones. Is it? Or is it like every other doctor ever in history, we figure call you because you're a sawbones? Do you not get what you're even referencing? Like, do you not get your entire premise?
It's one of those things where, like, I don't know if they do. And they have to try to find some convoluted way to, like, write these things in.
Yeah, they have to write around studio notes in poorly conceived ideas here.
I'm sorry, we have a poorly educated group that we're trying to make a movie for. They don't really understand the cyberpunk. I mean, we don't even get floppy disks, let alone jacking.
What is internet?
What we do know is jacks, where you throw the ball up and try to pick up shiny little pointy pieces of metal off the ground before the ball falls again.
I guarantee, the worst part is, as dumb as that sounds, I guarantee you that's how some of those fucking pitch meetings went. Where they were like, well, he jacks into this. And they're like, what does that mean? And then somebody had to be like, oh, you know that game your grandson plays? Or you played back...
You played it back 1908?
When you had that sled Rosebud? You remember that game you played? Guarantee you that's how some of these went. Because they don't seem to know the difference.
Yeah. Completely missing vital elements which might make this film make more sense.
And they're semantic, which would have been so easy to just explain them, but nobody did, apparently.
Nope. Julie's in this board meeting. Apparently she has risen up to be high-ranking in this company. We find out that they're haggling over mineral rights for some territory with the Japanese, and that they had lost the trade war, whatever that is.
Also extremely dated. When everybody was terrified about the Japanese because we did such a good job of neoliberalizing them after World War II that they started taking over everything we did.
Maybe they're trying to set up times for the giant robots and the robot jocks to fight over these mineral rights.
Well, at least that was the USSR. Well, this is the Japanese. But, I mean, we're talking about the same era when in Back to the Future it was like, oh, the Japanese make all the best stuff, or Nakatomi Tower, or Weyland-Yutani, or Tyrell sort of like implied being taken over by the Japanese.
Or the sushi bot stand in
or the yellow sushi bot man in Runaway. Oh God.
Thanks for that.
Thanks, Runaway.
We also meet McCandless, who played by Anthony Hopkins. This is Julie's boss, who seems to be quite fond of her. And he seems to be fully alive. No problems. He's doing great. He's in wherever. He's at far away. He can't be there right now.
No, he's in virtual reality land.
Yeah, but we don't know where he's at.
Pizza land there.
He's just, Pizza land. You were done with this red book when you got it, huh?
I know. Well, and it's funny too, like watching a role like this, and then thinking about it in context, I'm like, wow, they got Anthony Hopkins for this. But nowadays I'd be like, yeah, they got Anthony Hopkins for this.
Yeah, at the time, it was something. And at the time, it was also weird because they just told him, hey, just stand and act in front of this green screen, and we're going to put stuff behind you. Which in 1991 was not something they did.
Oh, no, not at all. In fact, that's extremely rare.
Essentially, that's all he does. So,
yeah.
And he's definitely alive. Super alive. No need to worry about that.
No.
So, Alex and his buddy go to this diner where he's given this hat. Now, originally, it was supposed to be the actual, like, Billy the Kid hat from Young Guns.
Oh, my God.
But apparently that wasn't available anymore because when Lou Diamond Phillips left after that, he took the hat.
Good for him.
So they give him a similar hat.
No. What they do is they gave him a regular fedora that he turns around backwards.
Well, to make it look like that. But they also give him a gun and he does the smirk and he's twirling it around the same way he did in Young Guns 2, being like, hey, you remember that movie?
Wow.
That was popular, right?
He might as well just turn to the camera and wink at this point.
He almost does.
He kind of almost does in a couple places, yeah.
Yeah. We soon realize that his former friend has ratted on him because the peace officers come.
Dexter Poindexter we're referring to. David Johansen
yes. Dexter Poindexter is ratted on him because the Freejack has quite the reward. So he's trying to get out of the slums he's living in, live like the fat cat. He is quickly gunned down. No money for him. He does not pass go. He does not collect $200.
Mm-hmm.
As the peace cops are shooting electro shotguns, some of them are shooting future guns with the future design. Mm-hmm. Some of them are just shooting literal shotguns that just shoot electric bolts out of them.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, really good. Top notch there. So they do more running. He steals a bike and he bikes it all the way to Julie's apartment where he gets voice authorized in, which is weird. And she doesn't believe him. There's no way he can be Alex. Alex is long dead. Don't know who you are. She sets off an alarm, so he runs away. Vasendik shows up, and she finds out that is Alex, and that Vasendik knew that he was going to come there and pre-programmed the computer to let him in. But there's also the possibility that maybe somebody else who wants his body and has control of her apartment maybe plugged that in.
Yeah, let's not give that away too early, because just on the surface, it voice ID'd him and let him in. Well, his voice is still the same. In fact, it's identical to the last time he was in there. And so when Vincent does all that, it just seems unnecessary. Because, like, she asks him when she confronts him in the apartment, how did you get voice ID'd? Well, because he's still the same guy with the same voice. So you would think he could just have gotten in anyway.
Well, now he would have been long dead, but...
I know, but if the idea is that the computer recognizes your voice, then you're presuming that they know what his voice sounds like.
That's true.
It
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense.
They would have had to find, I don't know, film footage of him and, like, utilize? I don't know how that works.
Yeah, but it's like one of the most important pivotal plot points when it comes to this arc. She doesn't believe him. He runs off, gets chased, goes into the slums.
Yeah. So Vicente comes upon him for long runs. He steals a champagne truck to run against these weird Mad Max death race cop vehicles.
Very death race, but they're all 100% single-person go-karts.
Yeah.
With fiberglass bodies over them.
Except for the big military truck thing
yeah,
they have.
which I'm pretty sure is a real vehicle.
It is. It is a
vehicle.
real vehicle. I don't know what they're called, but they're like big tank things.
Yeah, they're kind of tanks, yeah.
Yeah, but this one's painted pink, which is a choice.
Yeah, it's like the top half, I think, is supposed to be red. The bottom
It's a very
half,
light shade of red.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, lighting and all that kind of shit is a problem in this movie as well, throughout the whole thing. But
yeah. This is also one of the parts where we get some of the fun being played, because as Furlong is driving away, the Senate gets on the video phone, which is just like a laptop inside the truck.
It's straight up a laptop. And it's funny because it's the exact same kind of laptop that cops use.
Yeah.
It's weird because it doesn't seem out of place, but it's supposed to.
Well, it doesn't seem out of place like now.
As us as an audience watching it, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, that kind of... the guy was making deliveries. He's got a laptop. Okay.
He's a champagne delivery guy. Of course he needs his laptop. Tell him where to go.
Of course he has a netbook. Of course.
But Vicente, is like on there. He's like, hey, where you going? And Furlong closes it, but then he pops back up. And I think Mick was actually funny here.
It's fine. It doesn't make any sense that the laptop keeps popping back open.
No, I don't understand how that works. Just because you have access to his video phone doesn't mean you can do that. But
pop that up. Yeah.
It's whatever. They need it so that they can have this witty repertoire back and forth.
Yeah, it's fine. It's the only time he injects any life into this movie.
Yes. Really, only when Vicente is talking, especially to Alex, it's the only time you kind of get, this could be fun. Almost like a not quite buddy cop, but that kind of vibe.
It's a cat and mouse vibe.
Yeah.
That we're getting here. Yeah. But this is where it was like, is he Australian? Because it sounds odd for a I don't know. He just sounds, I feel like he's putting on some sort of affectation, and maybe I'm wrong and he just sounds like that. I don't know. But it just doesn't sound quite like what you would think Mick Jagger would sound like speaking.
Yeah. I don't know. I thought he sounded pretty Mickey, but
Yeah, that part obviously doesn't matter, but this is where you get the only sort of witty repartee in the entire movie. Yeah.
Now, Furlong keeps taking his soldiers out, and he's kind of like, oh, good job. You're doing all right for yourself.
Well, I've still got you.
Yeah, he's approaching the end of a bridge, and, he's like, hey, don't do it. You got to stop.
It's a jackknifed semi-truck that has got wedged under a bridge. So what happens is there's a semi-truck that jackknifes, which is why I mentioned the Mansfield bar thing earlier on with the bridge, because it's the same thing where the champagne truck now has to go under the semi-truck, which is, for those of you who don't know, that's how the model actress Jane Mansfield died. She was in a convertible and sped and then went under the semi-truck and decapitated her. Now, they have safeguards for that in real life now, but that's what happened. He's got the champagne truck, which it's like decorated to be a vendor. So it's got like this wooden thing on the back that's supposed to look vintage or whatever. And it keeps getting shaved off as this is where they try and showcase him as a race car driver, I think. Because they don't do a very good job of it, but that's what they're kind of trying to do. And then he keeps getting run into the sides of the tunnel they go through or whatever, and parts of it get shaved off. And by the end, you just have a truck, but it's still got the main top on the back. The sides are just gone. He's about to go under the semi-truck, shaves the top of the semi-truck off, but he's about to run into the roadblock, and that's when Vicendak is like, don't do it! Don't do it! I'll be out of $7 million or whatever the fuck it is. He goes, I'll be out of a job.
Which he already is.
Which he already obviously is, yes. And then that's when Emilio Estevez bails and jumps straight off, not just out of the truck he's driving, across the truck, across 2 lanes of traffic, and then off of the Brooklyn Bridge?
No, he pulls a Vin Diesel. You can do that. He was a little too fast, a little too furious.
He's dead. There's no logical world in which he lives through any of this.
No, he's got that Vin in him.
He definitely doesn't. Emilio Estevez does. It's got a lot of concentrated in a small package then.
No, he took some human Nas. It's fine.
No, is Nas still alive? I don't know. Still be alive.
Yeah, Vicendic's like, oh, I hope he doesn't drink any of that. Otherwise, I'm out all
of
the
job.
money.
But when he says drink any of that, he means drown.
I thought he meant if he actually ingests any of it, because it's so polluted that it's going to like poison his body to the point where it's like, oh, he's just like everybody else around here.
Oh, yeah.
A ruined body, you know?
You're probably right. But also, you can't just jump off the Brooklyn Bridge and live. That's not how things work. That's how suicides happen. That's why they don't do that.
I've seen it. Just happened.
It doesn't. Don't tell me it didn't happen. I saw it happen. There's no way that he did what he did and lived.
Well, a lot of this isn't possible.
He's been dead before, so.
So he washes up, and he meets a homeless Frankie Faison as Eagle Man, who's eating a river rat, asking if he wants some. Frankie goes on this weird diatribe about eagles and self-respect.
Well, first of all, Frankie say relax. And no, what he does is he washes up on, by shore, we mean a concrete barricade under a bridge. And he's like, what are you eating? And he just looks at him and goes, river rat? Want some? And he hands it to him and he's like, no, God, no. And then he kind of like stops and he thinks about it for a second. He's like, how do you even eat river rat? And he just like, to his credit, he kind of like stops eating and he looks at him and he goes, well, first you take the head and the tail off. And then he explains how he's an idiot for not knowing how poor people have to survive, which I think is a poignant moment in the movie, if you were going to make commentary of some sort.
Yeah, and this analogy about eagle and trying to find its home and, you know, how it's self-respect and whatnot, you know, it could be saying something, but
It's
contextually for the film, it doesn't make any goddamn sense.
No, what he says in the movie, yeah, I know, it makes no sense whatsoever, but I get what they're trying to go for there. He says, you ever heard that story about that eagle, you know, worked all his life, had the, you know, it's got the nest or whatever, and he climbs all the way up to the top, and he sees his eagle chicks, and is like, oh man, I finally got it, I've got it great, and then 2 X's come over his eyes like a cartoon, and he falls downward and dies, and Emilio Estevez is like, what? And then he goes, no, that never happens. That's not what the eagle does. Because then he starts going into, this is what America used to be, at least before the 10-year depression.
Yeah.
All of the sudden, America completely collapsed into authoritarian corporate oligarchism, which actually, sadly, is the most realistic part of this movie.
One might question whether it was Alex Furlong dying that sparked, you know, like Franz Ferdinand.
Oh, interesting.
The collapse of society, because essentially, it's only been 15 years.
Yeah.
And everything has completely collapsed since he left. So, like, he died, it all went to shit.
Yeah, that would be interesting if, like, taking him, this guy who doesn't mean anything, who's just a dumbass race car driver, was, like, the linchpin to all of world society collapsing into authoritarianism and corporate oligarchy. That's a movie!
Yeah.
That's not the movie we have.
No.
But it's a movie.
It could be a movie.
The part that really bothers me about this scene, and not just the fact that they're just kind of wasting all these things that could make interesting movies, but also, well, I haven't seen a bottle of wine since the 10-year depression. And I'm like, he just jumped out of a champagne truck.
Yeah.
Like right above there. They had champagne. There is wine available. It's all over the street.
I think the worse society gets, the more alcohol is going to become prevalent.
Well, I mean, I think they're trying to imply that only the rich could get it, but I mean, it still doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
You've seen wine! You can get wine, I guarantee you.
Another element Eagle Man brings up is after Alex runs away, he's like, yeah, you do it, you know, my mom is watching you, you know, cheering for you. So he has become this symbol that people are paying attention to, following his journey, almost Running Man-esque.
But he hasn't had time to do that.
No, there has no time for that.
Nobody even knows he's there.
No.
It's been like 5 hours.
Yeah, I mean, people may see his face, but they don't know anything about his journey running from the wealthy trying to kidnap him.
Well, and he does go on TV and kind of talks about it while he's tripping balls, but that's later.
That's after this. I guess I see what they might be trying to do with this, but they haven't laid any of that out, so it doesn't fit. It doesn't make sense.
It's 3 different movies fighting with itself. about what it's trying to say, but not hard. Casually presenting these things, but not in a way that advances a narrative.
Yeah. Again, maybe there's a narrative or some connected material or some ideas, but those are on the cutting room floor or deleted from the script.
100%.
Yeah. Now we're introduced to a new character, Julie's bodyguard Boone, played by Grand L. Bush.
Who's been in a ton of stuff, by the way.
Yeah. The first thing that pops in my head is Die Hard, where he's the FBI agent.
Robert Davi's partner or whatever.
Yeah, Robert Davi's partner. And Davi's talking about killing gooks in Saigon. He's like, I was in grade school, dickhead. That's what I always picture. But, like our techie dude, this dude might be cool. I want more of this.
Yeah.
But we don't get much. We'll get a little bit here in a bit, but...
He reminds me of the character in Total Recall, the one that hooks Schwarzenegger up with Melina. The one's got he's got like a scar or whatever, but he's the one that leads him to the strip club or whatever.
Yeah.
He's the go-between. He feels like that character to me because he's that go-between between Rene Russo and this underground or whatever. He's that archetype of, I'm the right-hand man of the right resistance person, and I'm going to tie you two together or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I could see that. But he's with her. Furlong's back in another slum, and there's a guy playing sax.
There we go.
Very reminiscent of Thunderdome-esque sax playing.
Oh, boy.
And Julie just happens to find him. They're just driving through the slum. She convinces him that she isn't after their bounty. She then takes him to a club because she knows a guy who might be able to get him out. Get them off the street and find some safe place for them.
It's always the club.
Now, this was supposed to be much bigger in the script and some of the stuff they filmed. This is going to be this club that was on the edge of society, where it's kind of really showing the haves and have-nots. And there's going to be stuff like public sex and bets and future S&M. There are going to be public beheadings. They even brought the guys behind Basket Case 3 to the special effects for these public beheading scenes because you can't get jacked in the future if you were without your head. So, as a show of resistance, they would go to these places and auction themselves off to be beheaded so they couldn't be jacked in the future. I mean, like a FU to the upper elites who might want them.
There's chicks with 3 tits.
If only.
In both Star Trek V and Total Recall. But if you were doing this correctly, this is where you lean into the cyberpunk thing, where you have transhumanists doing cyber mods, do a transmet thing, or even a altered carbon type stuff. But they're not doing that at all.
It's not nearly sci-tech enough for any of that.
Not at all.
Hey, here's some people who don't fit the norms of late 80s, early 90s,
Right.
Might wear some S&M gear, maybe have a shaved head for a woman, stuff like that. Their tops off. What?
That's crazy talk. And she only has 2 breasts?
I don't even mess with that. Now, Furlong has a drink here at the bar that knocks him on his ass. Apparently it's Future Hall or something.
Apparently.
Then a random reporter finds him and interviews him. Now, the reporter was Mick Jagger's real-life partner at the time.
By the way, looks 15 years older in this than she does in Batman 89. She looks terrible in this.
Little.
Compared to how she looks in that, this can't be that much later than 89. And it's what is it, 90, 91?
Yeah.
Did she actually jump off that building? What happened to her?
Maybe just living that rock star life with Mick.
Keith Richards hanging around, you just age sort of by default.
Well, apparently she didn't age her too much because she could still marry Rupert Murdoch in 2016.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's great.
That's gross.
She's interviewing him, and Emilio, he does an Arnold accent here as a specific reference to who they originally wanted to pitch this role for, and this whole idea of the Arnie action film. Which is why he did this Arnold Schwarzenegger accent, kind of again.
But at the same time, more commentary you could be making that you aren't.
Yep, 100%. So Julia then reaches out to McCandless, her boss, played by Anthony Hopkins, for advice. He agrees to try to look into who the client is. Says, stay safe, we'll get back to you in time. Then Alex and Julie, they have a love scene while Emilio's shirtless. Now he is still attracted to her and hits on her, which she rebuffs at first. This would have made more sense in the original script idea and casting with Linda Fiorentino. One, because she watched him die and she can't get over that. There's also supposed to be such a huge age gap. But since it's just 10, 15 years, she looks just the same.
Yeah.
It's not it doesn't make much sense that it's not working.
It feels more like when Murphy goes back into his old house and has the flashbacks of his wife.
Yeah.
It feels more like that than it does lovers spanned out through time or whatever.
Yeah. They have a scene, and then she's going to, like, help him get away. We get a quick scene with Michelet, which is Jonathan Banks' character, interrogates the nun that had found Alex. Doesn't really come to much of anything.
Such a waste.
Such a waste. Then Julie is taking Alex back into the slum area and is going to let him go. And she says that she has a life that she can't just walk away from. Us was 18 years ago, but 2 days for you. Now she lays a scenario out about coming to him before the big race and asked him to drop everything. Would he do it? He says no, that he wouldn't do it. And so he realizes, oh, I can't just ask her to drop everything in her life and run away with me. I kind of really like this aspect where if she's the older woman, she has career. She's like, our time came and passed. You go do your own thing now. I have my own life to live.
Sure.
That's really kind of a mature way of looking at this. This isn't just he comes to the future and wins her back and they run, happily ever after.
Right.
I did love you. That's no longer me. I have my own thing going on.
Which is really interesting, too, because if you had done it in any sort of competent way, commentary is that if everything's gone to shit because he left, this attraction, this draw back to her is invariably going to fail, and the fact that he left in the first place is why they can't be together. I mean, yeah, that's way more interesting, but then none of that matters either.
It doesn't end up mattering because it's thrown away real quick after this. For a reason, which we'll get to. But at least the idea I like. I'm not the damsel that you wanted. We're different people. I know doesn't mean anything to you, but as adults, we can recognize that this isn't our time anymore.
Okay, that's something.
So Boone goes with him to drop him off to the Resistance. There's again another big gunfight. This is where we get Boone awesomeness. He automatically pulls out like a katana and starts cutting cutting people up.
I want to know more about this.
Yeah. He helps him run away and gets grenades, blows up and whatnot. Now Furlong is running away, but then Vasendik is there and he's gonna run, but decides not to and needs to figure out who's behind this. Because apparently people are following him again like the Running Man. Furlong is caught by Vasendik in a smoky factory, and Vasendik reveals it's McCandless who is behind it all. And because apparently he had saved his life, he's going to give him a 5-minute head start to run away again. Apparently, I read this, that Jagger he wanted to make this kind of fun, and he was going to count with my eyes closed, 1 higgledy-piggledy, 2 higgledy-piggledy. But they changed it to 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, to be more Americanized. That people would get it.
Am I wrong in thinking this is the identical set from RoboCop, Total Recall, Cyborg?
An unused smoky factory somewhere. I mean, this one would be
probably
in Atlanta?
Specifically in Dallas.
It was shot in Atlanta, so it would be somewhere there.
Right. So it's not the same one, but it looks exactly the same as those ones from all of those movies.
Yeah.
Better movies doing very similar premises, actually.
Yeah, there's definitely some Venn diagram crossover there.
RoboCop and Total Recall very much have a crossover with this movie.
Mind swapping and whatnot. There's lots going on there.
Oh, big time, yeah.
Alex runs away, and he finds that Julie has stolen the tank truck thing and picks Alex up. Now, they call Michelet, again, the guy who's in charge of the Max Corp or whatever. They're going to meet in his office, wait for McCandless. So they go to this huge Blade Runner-esque corporate hotel bank-looking place, and cop security let them up. Then they show this footage of his crash again and again. I guess to squeeze every dime out of this F1 car explosion they had. Michelet reveals that Canlis, is dead, and that it's Michelet's plan to just let the time wear out. Because he only has so much time after his dead body, his conscience was uploaded into the spiritual switchboard to take over a new body. And if he just lets it run out, well then Michelet gets the company, McCandless is gone, no harm, no foul. So he doesn't give a shit about Furlong. He goes to let them go.
It's way too late in the movie to do this.
Yes, we also find that he's been the one organizing this resistance, I guess, funding them to keep things from working out smoothly. But he does fire Julie, and he lets him go. She does get off maybe one of the top cinematic slaps onto his face before she leaves. Great physical slap.
It is a good slap, yeah.
Good slap. And so they go to leave, but Michelet orders their deaths when they're supposed to get off the end elevator. But Vasendik shows up and goes to kill all those cops instead. Now they decide to go up instead of down after that. And they plan to go to the 100th floor for the fire escape, but the elevator doesn't stop. And it goes up and up, like to 200 penthouse suite, which is the spiritual switchboard, aka the big jack on top of the building.
Oh, boy.
So they get up there, tubes everywhere that look just like the tubes at the end fight battle on Cloud City in Empire Strikes Back.
You're not wrong.
The lights flashing on this metal sphincter doors and everything. And then we get a little VR fun as McCandless explains his plan while leading Furlong and Julie to stall for time until Vicendic can get up there, and then they can do the switcheroo so that McCandless, aka Anthony Hopkins, can take over his body. We find out that he wants to do this for a couple reasons. One, because he's young, healthy, whatever, but mainly because he wants Julie, and if he takes the old lover's body, then she's just going to fall in love with him, and he can roll out the rest of his days with her at his side.
Ruined by manimal lust.
Oh, manimals.
Yep.
So they put Furlong's hands on a smaller jack, because you can't have enough jack symbolism here, and they're going to have this mind off.
Highlander 2, The Quickening.
Yeah, they got to quicken real quick with this big crystal in the center, because you need crystals?
A dark crystal, for sure. Dark crystal, dilithium, whatever it is.
There's just Skeksis underneath pulling the strings here. And then Furlong says, you don't need a new body. You need a new soul. But whatever. We get this silly CGI mind transfer war replay of the whole movie.
But just the movie, not his, like...
Just the movie.
Not in, like, Flash Gordon, where they go, into Zarkov's, when he's a kid, and then World War II, and then all that stuff. No, just the movie.
Just the movie, yeah. Just the past day and a half, apparently.
Yes, just the past day and a half or so that we've seen, yes.
They're having, like, this battle of wills, and Alex looks like he's losing, and he starts screaming, and Hopkins is straight-faced, I guess, acting intensely, if you want to call it that.
It's Anthony Hopkins doing the least work humanly possible.
Yeah, just stand there and stare at him. Can do.
That's what he does.
But Julie is able to steal a gun and blow up the crystal right when Michelet shows up. So Michelet is like, great. The crystal transfer's done. Didn't happen. I have the company. But Furlong's like, no, I'm McCandless. I'm like, oh, shit. Was there enough time? It's like, yeah, we've had transfers take shorter. We've had transfers take longer. Who knows? I don't know.
They have a wormy science guy that runs over and says, well, it's totally possible. It's happened before.
Now, why don't you have a Cyberalysis character be the techie here? At least bring him back. And being like, hey, I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, where did he go, by the way?
Yeah, just out of the film for no reason. So they're like, okay, he's got a personal ID number. Check it. And so he thinks about it real hard. Vicendic, has the code in his hand, and it's really dramatic. And he goes, 6.
Yeah, yes, this part was awkward.
Oh, very much so. Because you think, one, it's funny that this personal code would just be one number, 6. Because Vicendic is like, correct.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. But then they start doing more numbers and it continues.
Yeah, but in a weird way, too. It's already awkward that they make it seem like, oh, that's it. 6. Yep, you're right. And then there's this weird awkward silence. And then Emilio Estevez is like, 8.
Yeah.
Yep, that too. Yep.
It's almost like they did reshoots.
Yeah.
Originally was written at 6. And it's like, oh, yeah. No, that's kind of funny.
But that's not enough numbers, so...
It's quirky. Oh, yeah. Your payoff is this almost lighthearted thing, but it just doesn't really work when they keep doing more numbers.
Because they keep doing more numbers, and then it gets even more awkward because he seems like he believes them, and then sometimes it seems like he doesn't believe him, and then he just walks away, and then Estevez starts screaming out more numbers.
Yeah, and he's kind of screaming at Michelet, and Michelet's going like crazy. It's like, no, this can't be happening. It was supposed to be my company. And he pulls out his gun. But he's right
about the numbers, so it's like, why does he keep walking away like he's wrong? Because we're still in the number proving phase. We haven't even got to the like, I don't care about the numbers. He gets 4 numbers in and then walks off, and then Emilio Estevez is like, and 875357. Also that.
You mean Vicendic walks off?
Yeah, Vicendic walks off.
Yeah, well, I think he's just walking around because I guess he was tired of standing there.
Yes.
It'd been all of 10 seconds, so...
Yeah, right. It just feels like he gives up on the scene, and they're still shooting. And they're like, well, you gotta follow him.
Maybe he's like, this scene doesn't really make much sense of work, so I'm
done with it.
I'm gonna improvise, just walk around.
Yeah, and then they keep going with the numbers, which you would feel like in the scene, because he's already walked off, that they're not important. but then they are, and then aren't automatically after.
Right, yeah. So Michelet is going crazy because like, there's no way McCandless is taking over. I wanted the company. So he pulls out his gun to try to shoot McCandless, who he believes, in Furlong's body. And then the Syndics people light him up. The Syndic's like, hey, welcome back to us, Mr. McCandless. Yeah, thank you. You did a good job.
Bring my car around.
Yeah, bring the car around. So they get dressed up in different fineries. And he takes Julie, and they go to drive away. But then the Syndic shows up and blocks them. Gets out and he walks to the window and he's like, Julie, you're going to have to teach him much better. And he's like, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, McCandless can't drive. He could never drive. I knew it was you this whole time. That's when the whole audience is like, oh, what? Julie as well. It's like, it's Furlong. It's like, I was funning. I'm not McCandless. I'm still old Alex, but I'm going to take his money and pretend to be McCandless.
Well, nobody bought it that he was actually McCandless. He was obviously a bluff. Oh, yeah, he totally transferred into my brain. And obviously, okay, here's the dumb part about that. He obviously did get some of the brain juice from Anthony Hopkins because he was able to pull those numbers out, and they were correct, right?
No, the numbers aren't correct.
Oh, I thought they were.
He asked him about the numbers, and he's like, no, you didn't get any of them right.
Well, then why did everyone say they were right?
Only Vicendic knew the numbers, and Vicendic, I guess, wanted...
That's why he walked away.
I think he wanted his commission.
Right, of course.
Because if he delivered the body and got the mind transfer, then he gets paid.
Right.
2, he was like, oh, I'm a funny rapscallion. I like to see things go awry for my own amusement. So I want this Freejack weirdo to have all the money in the world and win because I've grown to respect him.
Not really, though, because, it explains why he walked away in the middle of that conversation then. But Michelet is the one that believes that he does have the numbers, and that's why he's like, fuck you, I deserve this company, and that's why they shoot him. But after that, what does he give a shit? Wouldn't he benefit more from being in on the idea that McCandless is now actually Emilio Estevez, and then could still possibly get paid? Once they leave, what is his motivation? Based on anything we've been given so far in this movie.
He lets them be him because we assume he gets paid.
He doesn't seem to. That's why he seems to go after them, because he knows he's not going to.
Oh, I think he just wants to rub it in and be the fun foil at the very last breath of the film.
I guess, but this is also us projecting a lot onto this character that doesn't have that much. I don't think what you're saying is there. I think it's a better way for us to rationalize how this character works. I don't think that's in there, based on everything he's done thus far in this movie.
I'm having to read stuff in, so you're kind of like, have to assume.
I think you and I are both giving them too much credit. I don't think there's that much there.
There isn't much. But it is kind of like the fun pseudo-twist ending. I guess it's supposed to be a twist.
I guess.
Because we were led to believe something for 3 minutes before that. But he does get away. And before he leaves, to prove that he's him, he's like, hey, nibble my ear for luck. Just like he did last time he was driving a car back in 1990s.
And that worked out so well for everyone.
And then they drive away into the sunset to let the poor still be poor and use all their money for the grand old adventures of running the biggest company in the world.
But then it's got a weird voiceover. He talks about hearing everybody in the world because he's got the prize. That's the ending they're doing there.
Oh, then he's the one who builds the dome to keep the ozone out.
Already more interesting. This is he's the one that misguidedly makes that dome that ends up being his corporate
let's be
hellhole.
Honest, Highlander 2 is more interesting than this.
Wow. Okay, it is definitely more interesting. Is it better? Ooh. I don't know.
I mean, it has swords.
They both have swords, though.
And Michael Ironside.
Okay, I'll give you the Michael Ironside factor. But this one does have Jonathan Banks and Mick Jagger, one of the only rock stars from that era not to be in Highlander the series.
God, oh man, think of Anthony Hopkins, almost like a retired Highlander.
He'd be a watcher.
Out of the game, but still has all the skills.
I mean, it would be interesting. Yeah, it's either that or he's a watcher.
Oh, Mick Jagger's a Highlander? I want to see that.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, that's their entire wheelhouse. Is guys like Mick Jagger. The range, the scope is Bull from Night Court to the lead singer of, The Who, but then also Fine Young Cannibals.
Hijack? Ooh, Hijack.
Hijack. Oh, no. Now we're reopening this case. Oh, no. That's dangerous ground. We're on deadly ground now.
Yeah. Speaking of which, after Freejack, Jeff Murphy couldn't really get a whole lot of work. He did do Under Siege 2, Dark Territory.
Oh, no.
That was his next big feature. And the one that made the most money after that. He was the second unit director on Dante's Peak.
Oh,
I mean, coming back to Highlander, Fortress 2, re-entry.
Oh, Fortress 2.
Yeah.
2, the second best one of the Fortress
The second
movies.
best Christopher Lambert.
Fortress movie.
Ooh, Beth Toussaint. Forgot about you. Ishariyar? Yes, please.
Oh, Ishariyar. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. I get it.
Yeah. Okay. In the grand scheme of our rock stars in science fiction vehicles in the 80s, 90s, I think this one and Mick Jagger's performance is better than our previous entry
Runaway.
of Runaway. This is better.
Yes, I think Mick Jagger is better. I don't think either of those two have anything to work with.
No, but at least I feel like what Mick Jagger's bringing to this is what he wanted to.
Yeah.
And at least has some charisma that's showing up.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Gene Simmons is a fucking board with a nail in it.
I mean, he has a presence, but I don't know if it's an enjoyable screen presence.
Yeah, but I mean, he's doing the same thing that Jonathan Banks does in Breaking Bad, but Jonathan Banks is an expert at it.
Yeah.
Deadpan, Walter, what are you talking about? He managed to make that look good. Gene Simmons is just awful. And I think Mick Jagger's awful in this, but at least you're right. I think he's at least doing something.
Yeah. I also think, again, this is a film that had the concept of ideas for a cool, interesting science fiction film to say something, but it eschewed all of those.
It's got like 15 different ideas of cool science fiction films saying something and doesn't do any of them.
No.
It doesn't go down one specific path, definitely doesn't create any sort of cohesive narrative or especially commentary. I mean, there's really nothing going on here. It really just feels like a pastiche of... It just feels like if movies from this era were like building blocks, like Duplos, they're just robbing from other ones and stacking them on top of each other with no plan. There's no structure you're building. You're just building something to build it. And it doesn't mean anything. That's like the tenet of science fiction and fantasy, right? Is to make a commentary. Isn't that the whole point?
Yeah.
This doesn't do that.
Which the source material has in spades. And I think the director wanted to do, but from the production problems, all the different writers, editors, reshoots, casting things, all over the place, he just wasn't able to put that on screen.
Couldn't land it. Yeah.
And it's too bad. But it makes for a unique feature, kind of lost to time. I don't think many people are talking about Freejack these days.
Not enough.
And I would say overall, I hadn't watched it in decades, and I watched it again. I was like, oh, that was fine. I didn't hate it.
Yeah. It's more competent than you would think.
Yeah. I think I rewatched it again before this to kind of take some notes and stuff, and it was much worse the second time.
Oh, well.
When you're examining things and like, no, this just does not work.
Right.
On any level, really.
Outside of general vibes, it doesn't work at all.
Very much no. For just a passing oddity in the sci-fi landscape, especially with a rock star. I mean, Mick Jagger isn't in too many movies.
No, not very many.
There is that.
Which is why we wanted to do this little mini, because you could say that about almost all of the people that do these. Some of them did a bunch of movies, but most of them, I feel like they were competing with each other to do this and never before or again tried. It was just like a very specific era where rock stars tried to do a very specific thing, kind of competing with each other. And or at least inspired by each other. Because, like, if David Bowie isn't in all the movies he was in back then, I don't think anybody does any of these movies. I mean, Mick Jagger might have shown up in a movie, but I don't think it was going to be a sci-fi trope film, all of the ones we're tackling in this series. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's quite possible. Maybe when we get to the end of this whole series, whenever that does come to a conclusion, a little retrospective on the role of rock stars in these sci-fi vehicles throughout the 70s, 80s, 90s. It would be interesting to see. Maybe Bowie was the door opener, but I don't know. We'll have to see how that plays out.
I'm sure he wasn't the first, but I think he was like the main.
Yeah, it's quite possible.
The guy known for it. Yeah.
Yeah. And we'll have to see where that journey takes us. But you, gentle listener, you'll have to wait and see how far down the rabbit hole we go.
Oh, it goes.
Oh,
it goes pretty deep.
It goes, baby. But we thank you for taking this journey with us, jacking in and jacking off freely.
That's right.
Untethered.
No notes. No notes on that commentary.
Thank you for listening. We hope you've enjoyed. If you wouldn't mind sharing, subscribing, we'd super appreciate it. Please pass around it those who need to get jacked in themselves. Can't let them be too free.
To the web or otherwise.
Yeah. If you wouldn't mind giving us 5 Ascendex on the podcast app of your choice.
Don't get enough of those.
Ideally, Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. And again, thank you. Thank you for just stopping by, hanging out with us, checking out an old movie. Man, it's almost getting close to 35 years old. Almost.
Mm-hmm. Less than half of Mick Jagger's career.
Which will never end.
No, it'll never end.
You know, this weird sci-fi rockstar oddity. And we hope you come back for the next one, whenever that might be. But until that time, Skip, before they get jacked into the future, what should they do while they're still with the living?
While you guys still have your bones, and have yet to be jacked of said bones, please make sure that you have paid your tabs, make sure you've cleaned up after yourself to some sort of reasonable degree, make sure you're safe, weather has been really bad. Make sure that you support your local comic shops and retailers, and from Dispatch Ajax, from our temporary studios, we would like to say Godspeed, fair wizards.
1 higgledy-piggledy, 2 higgledy-piggledy.
1 Mississippi.
Well, you're kind of doing a little Bowie there.
I don't know what Jagger's doing in this movie. I don't get it.
Yeah, and you can't see, like, doing the big duck lips. That doesn't work, baby.
I'm doing the chicken dance, but it's really hard to see.
It is hard to see. I don't like it when I'm seeing it right now.
In an audio format, especially. Well, he's got that blackout on one of his glass lenses, though he doesn't need it.
Yeah, I'm close to Event Horizon myself as we speak.
Yeah. They go back to Eastside Morales. Doesn't need the eye patch. Doesn't need it.
If he could pair up with Boone, have them do a little buddy cop movie.
Rosencrantz and Guildenstern type adventure? Yeah, like, I'm down.
They just walk through the Freejack movie.
At least there's something.
That would be something.
Please, go away.